I said, look, don't listen to us again. What the hell do I know? Don't listen to us, right? Don't listen to us. Go back to your professors and ask them what is my ROI? And really, I said, what is my ROI?
Yeah, exactly.
Degree, right? But what is the ROI for an entrepreneurial degree, and what is the ROI on a finance degree? And
Welcome
let's
to the Unstuck Career Podcast with your host, Ken Williams. Each week, we move along your path to possibility so you can finally have the life you want. Let's learn how to deal with people you never wanted to be friends with together so you can become unstuck and unstoppable in your career and life. And welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck Career Podcast. Today, I have a new friend. We met 7 minutes ago. Not even that, 5 minutes ago. This is JB. And I just wanted to know, JB, what the hell do you know?
I don't know much. Yeah, no, it's so funny. I've got my logo up behind me. And so I'm in my studio right here recording. And my podcast is called What the Hell Do I Know? And I called it that because when my kids were younger in their teen years, they would glaze over with their eyes.
Yes.
And when they glaze over in the eyes, when I'd start preaching at them, telling them, hey, think like this. I want you to think, when you're in your schoolwork and I need you to be dedicated, or I need you to, this is what I would do, or, and I'd start getting them to put goals together and plans for long-term future plans. And they're thinking about tomorrow.
Right.
They're thinking about their girlfriend or boyfriend that they're going to see, or the guy that said, so they just glaze over. And so I'd say, hey, look, do it, don't do it. What the hell do I know?
Right.
So I started the pod to kind of bring in friends. I've had quite the journey, served on some incredible boards, and have partnered up with some great people, and been involved in some really cool businesses. And so I just thought, hey, maybe if they don't listen to me, I could bring on some of my friends,
Yeah.
and they'd listen to their advice on what to do. Right.
That's
And
right.
so that's where I got. So it's like, what the hell do I know?
I love it. So just for the record, just to kind of set the stage,
Mhm.
um, as a podcaster,
Mhm.
uh, I have gotten, and I'm sure you have too, JB, but I I get pitches from people on a pretty regular basis, and most of the pitches are garbage.
Yeah.
Most of the pitches are, and I have one that, and most of them I just ignore. But there was one that I really think that this person who's 87 years old and has um, designed a new crochet stitch or whatever it is, it would be
Right.
great for your audience. And I think, no, my audience is people who are stuck at a career impasse and they've realized they're not going the direction they want and they want to figure out how to pivot.
Yeah.
And I don't need to talk to Mabel who crochets
Right.
as much as I would love to, but that's not what I want for my audience. And I'm
Sure.
not, I could, but just, and I, before we started recording, which literally we met 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen your podcast, so I knew what you'd look like.
Right, right. Oh, and I checked yours out.
You're
But,
perfect.
but the email, and this is a lesson, but the
Yeah.
email that I got from JB was so um different from anything else that I ever gotten. It was specific about one of the episodes,
Right.
and he so it was clear that he had watched the episode or the podcast, and then added in what value he could add. And I thought, I've got to meet this guy. So
No, no.
here we are now, 9 minutes in.
Yeah. No. And you know what, though? That is kind of the clue into anything you're doing, whether it's I'm wanting to chase after getting, putting myself out on different podcasts, or if I'm looking for a pivot in
Yeah.
life. Like, what is it that is attractional? So, in other words, if I'm looking at this business, what attracts me to that business?
Uh-huh.
What attracts me to that company? What attracts me to that service area? And what value can I add to it? That's really the question in your audience ought to be asking themselves every day.
Right. Well, and I recorded a video a couple weeks ago, and it got some traction, which I was kind of happy about.
Sure.
But the message that I put out was, if you put out 477 applications
Right.
on LinkedIn or job boards or whatever, and you haven't gotten an interview,
Right.
you're doing something wrong. Don't. That's the definition of insanity. You're doing the same
100%.
thing over and over and expecting, well, this time, but you're then blaming everything else. You're blaming the algorithm, or you're blaming the network, or you're blaming the big one, the economy. Well, the economy is
Right.
horrible. No, the
Right.
economy is great. The
Right.
economy's fine.
You got to change some things up. You got to
Yeah.
change some things up. If you're not getting the results you want, you've got to change it up. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again. Now, when it works, work it. Like
Yeah.
Miss Elliott said, when it works, work it.
So you mentioned before I hit record, you mentioned that there are three main things that you really talk about. One of them is entrepreneurship, but the
Sure.
other one is you talk
Well,
about faith.
yeah, I do. So I have a faith background, but I typically, when I go on podcasts, I usually tell people I can cover whatever you'd like.
Hmm.
So I usually cover, I've got a heavy entrepreneurial career. I've worked inside faith organizations and helping to expand their organizations and their worlds. And then I've also, I'm a family person. I've been married, this February will be 25 years. I've been with my wife 31 years,
That's
and we
incredible.
have three kids, 21, 19, and 17.
So they know everything.
Yeah. You know what's great? You know what's great is my son, and this is the thing you've got as parents, like just lean into this because you're going to think that it will never come back to you. But there was a point with my son, especially now that he's a senior in college, and I've been talking to him about finance and he's really good in that world. And in fact, he went after an entrepreneurial degree when he was in college. And I remember telling him, like, son, I'm not sure that's like, look, I mean, do what you need to do, go after where your attraction. I said, but most entrepreneurs wouldn't even go to college.
Mm,
They would just do it.
right.
And I said, so I think you need to start looking at something else. And his mother and I started counseling him in that world. And long story short, I remember he was arguing with his mother, and then he came out with me, and he's like, she just doesn't get it. And so I kind of hit it from a different angle. And I said, son, you're really good at finance. You're really good at accounting. You're really good at those things. All we're trying to tell you is you might want to explore a second degree or moving to that degree.
Uh-huh.
And this was probably his sophomore year in college, and maybe part of his junior year. At any rate, I said, look, don't listen to us again. What the hell do I know? Don't listen to us, right? Don't listen to us. Go back to your professors and ask them what is my ROI? And really, I said, what is my ROI?
Yeah, exactly.
Degree, right? But what is the ROI for an entrepreneurial degree, and what is the ROI on a finance degree? And let's just look at where your starting salaries would be based on those two degrees, and what should you do? And so about 2 or 3 months later, he said, you know what, Dad, it's only going to take me another semester, and I'm going to go ahead and get 2 degrees, one in
Nice.
finance. I said, what was the answer? He said, well, starting out is probably a $40,000 clip
Oh,
difference
wow.
in the 2 degrees on average. Now, it's not saying that an entrepreneur degree and you can't be successful. I'm not, I've got a big hang up in colleges these days in general because I think, my kids are very fortunate if they want to go get additional education. Mom and dad are taking care of it. But if you don't have, if there's a young person listening today and you don't have that money, you need to be really, really careful because you can get into a world of debt that you will never be paid back. I
Right.
mean, and college debt and student loan debt is the one debt that stays with you after bankruptcy. Like
Yeah.
if you find yourself in a sticky situation, you got to declare bankruptcy. Student loans hang on to you
Yeah.
forever. You know, and so you got to be real careful with that stuff. My kids are very fortunate, and so again, I don't discount anyone out there wanting to get additional education. You just need to be smart about it.
Yeah.
If you need a teaching degree, I would say go to community college.
Mm,
You don't have to go to Princeton to get a teaching degree and teach math,
yeah.
in high school or elementary school, focus, understand where you're going and think about the return on your time that you're putting in and how you can get there. So, for him, that was my pitch to him. He went and figured it out. And now that he's a senior in college, he will come to me with business ideas and
Mm,
directions, and he'll come to his mother with ideas and directions. And what's so great is I will ask him these questions because we're in a different headspace. And my wife is the one that really started doing this. But we'll say, do you want my advice or do you want me to listen? And
mm,
that's pretty interesting for when you're in a 21, almost 22-year-old mindset because he's starting to hear. And what I'm hearing from him now is, I want your feedback.
mm.
And so that's what I'm telling you, parents, stay the course. And if you start changing as they get older, you're going to start saying those things. Do you want my advice or do you want me to listen? He's got to make these decisions. It's his
Right.
life. He's got to make them. He's got to stand on. Same with my two daughters. They've got to figure it out. But hopefully, we've given them the tools and ways to think and that they'll do it. And what I love about him is he wants feedback. And
Yeah.
so doesn't he's starting to see, and if he can continue that with everyone else around him, I wish at 22 that I said, I don't know anything. I wish I knew that, but I
Yeah.
didn't. I thought I knew everything. And so he's starting to see he doesn't know anything. Yeah.
Right. I love that. So, um, the entrepreneurship I want to get into a
Yeah.
little bit, but I'm
Yeah.
curious, how's your family relationship? You've got a solid, consistent family, being married
Yeah. Yeah.
for
That's
that many years in a row,
very helpful. Very
something.
helpful.
But
Yeah.
how's your family,
Mhm.
the dynamic, the support, the all that, and your faith affected or informed your entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. My family, I think, has helped the entrepreneurship in the sense that they've always stood with me and behind me. The
Mhm.
kids really don't have a choice, right? And
Right.
my wife has done an amazing job. Well, first off, my wife is my right-hand person, and I hope I'm hers.
Yeah.
So we do everything together. We're very unique in the sense that, and what you don't see is we're in studio here, but I have a control room that's running all my audio and everything else. She learned that so that she could be behind the scenes and do all
Oh,
that.
cool.
And so she's here with me. But so we do everything together, whether it's investing in real estate, equities, venture capital, you name it, we're doing it. She's the smartest person I know. She has a law degree and interior design degree and real estate degree, and all that stuff was really to help our businesses. And so I'm super thankful to have a help mate
Hmm.
that came alongside me. So I had
Yeah.
that first. And then my children really, and this is something that my wife has done a better job than I have. But when we get in those busy seasons, she plans a vacation.
Mm.
She plans a week or 2 weeks. I mean, we'll go down to Costa Rica and stay 2 weeks in Costa Rica, or we'll go a month over in Europe. And it's tough to make those changes. And she'll set it out and say, hey, look, you've got X amount of days to get, your podcast ready, or to get this done, or to have all of your content done, because we're going to go.
Yeah.
And that's so important, because I think that's helped keep us grounded as a family, is that we will take those vacations, and sometimes just a long weekend, right? It's
Hmm.
just driving. We're going to go to Atlanta and catch a game, or we're going to go and do something different. And it's just making sure that we peel away from the daily grind,
Right.
where you feel like sometimes it's a fire hydrant right at your face and you can't even drink, and we just say, okay, now we're going to peel away from that. And I know when I peel away from that, she won't put up with me being on my phone or content or talking or taking calls or whatever. And so I have to be present. And I really appreciate her focus on that. Yeah.
I love that.
That's
So
really been important.
yeah. So you mentioned a lot of things that you've done from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Have you always been um
Yeah,
minded or
yeah, yeah. So I think it was really at an early age. I mean, again, my wife was 15 and I was 17 when we met in high school, and it really changed my life more than just the fact that she was smoking hot and that I wanted a date on a Friday night date. And I
right?
was a senior in high school, and I felt like I had partner, had these little girlfriends and all these other things. Throughout, really, I mean, middle school and high school is always like, just every other boy that's out there, right? And so my senior year, I went in my senior year with no girlfriend, right?
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, I'm about to go off to school. I'm going to go and play soccer and do all these things. I had a scholarship set up, and I said, I'm going to date everybody. I'm just
Yeah.
going to date everybody. I'm going to go on a different date every Friday night. I'm playing the field, and then I'll go off to college, and life will be great. And that was my plan. And then I met my wife. And I had never seen somebody so goal oriented in my life. I'd never
Mm.
seen somebody that talked about what she wanted later in life and how she was going to achieve it, and how what we could do together, and that she saw something in me. And somebody, and look, it's one thing when your mother tells you that you can
Yes.
do anything. It's totally different when this girl that you're talking to, that's 15 years old, is like, you have something special.
Oh,
And
wow.
my parents were workers. So my mother was a teacher, and then later worked inside the federal government in licensing programs, and was head of that licensing department. But she worked for the government. My
Mhm.
father's a salesperson, and he's always worked for a company selling whatever their, fitting or pipe or valve or whatever it is that he's putting out there. He was always in dealing in that world, and is very good at it. He's retired now, but was very successful in that endeavor. But they worked for somebody. And that's just what I assumed, that I would get a skill and apply that skill into someone and do those things. The difference is after I met my wife, she introduced me to her family, and they were first generation garbage haulers. And her mom and dad were entrepreneurs. But even further back, her mom's parents were entrepreneurs. Her mom,
Mm.
my wife's grandfather was he had I think a like a seventh or eighth grade education and dropped out of school at 17, went into the Navy in kind of the World War II era and probably Korean War era, but was in the Navy. And then when he came home, he didn't know what he's going to do, so he started working clearing land and got some money to get some equipment to clear land. Very fortunate to start clearing all of the Disney. So
Oh,
he got
wow.
the Disney contract to clear that, was smart enough to realize that they needed to do something with that debris and then built landfills. And so he took everybody else's debris into those landfills and eventually sold that off to Waste Management and did incredibly well with like a seventh grade education.
Wow.
So, and what was interesting is my father-in-law's side, if you contrast that with him, there was some lineage that goes back into owning grocery stores and different things like that. But my father-in-law's father, so my wife's grandfather on that side, worked in GE and really was kind of just underneath Jack Welch, but always worked in that world and told my father-in-law when my father-in-law said, "Hey, I've lost my job. I want to start my own business. I need a loan. Would you be interested? I found this garbage company I want to buy for like $20,000 and one truck, 500 customers." And his father told him, "There's no way. There's no way. You need to go and find a corporate job. You need to find a pension. When they
Hmm.
had those things, you need to,
Right.
dive into that." And he then pivoted and went to his father-in-law and said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity. What do you think?" And now, again, the entrepreneurial mindset was like, "Yeah, of course you need to do this,
Right.
and I will loan you this, and here's the interest rate I'm going to place on your loan because I'm not giving it to you." And
Yeah.
they paid that loan off, and my wife and I totally expected to probably do something. After I graduated school, I was working in concrete plants. I had to work through school, so I worked at I worked on the back of garbage trucks when I'd come home with my father-in-law. I'd tote garbage and I'd sling it, do all that stuff. I'd work at the freight lines and loading docks. And then I got in at a concrete company and started managing concrete plants. And eventually they were pulling me into the corporate office right
Mm.
after graduation. And my father-in-law put a halt to that and said, "Hold on a second. I need somebody to replace me. Would you mind coming on with me?"
Oh,
And
wow.
uh, I said, "Well, I don't know. It's family business." But I thought, man, this is the smartest, one of the smartest entrepreneurs I've ever seen. I'm
Yeah.
17, fast forward, I'm like 23 now. I thought, what an honor that he would think I could come in and possibly take over his company. And my wife and I were about to get married.
Uh-huh.
So I said, we talked about it, and I thought it was a great opportunity. So I put in my 2 weeks at my concrete plant. The CEO of the plant came to my location from their ivory tower,
Uh-huh.
and came to my location. He sat down with me. He said, I want to tell you, I don't know you should do this. We're about to pull you in to the corporate office. You're going to have a trajectory to be into the C suites before long." And I said, "Well, can I work right beside you every day? Could I learn
Mhm.
from you every day?" And he goes, "Well, no, no, you can't do that. We're going to just have you kind of work the ranks up." And I said, "Well, see, that's the problem." I said, "I'm
Uh,
going to work right beside an entrepreneur making the decisions, the one making the decisions every day, why he makes them, how he makes them, what is he thinking when he makes them. I'm going to have the opportunity to work beside somebody every day. And if it goes wrong, I'm going to get the better education than I got at the University of Georgia."
yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm going to jump and I'm going to go. And I appreciate that. And he was very kind to me. And he said, "If it doesn't work out, you can come back." And so I made the jump and never looked back. We had 12,000 customers. My wife, shortly after graduating law school, she retired her mother. We
Uh-huh.
ran a business with some incredible people with us and grew it to the largest family owned sanitation company, or one of them in the Southeast. We were the largest residential hauler in the Southeast and exited out of that in 2009. But we went from probably 12,000 customers or so to over 100,000 residential customers
Wow.
so it's really an incredible opportunity. And I like to think that we, made it better, but we had a
Yeah.
lot of great people along with us for sure.
That's great. One of the things that you kind of danced around So I'm
Yeah.
just going to ask you
Yeah.
directly
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's a point that I think I know the answer, but I want to make the point. This is something that I like to talk about all the time because one of the things that I hear from people, comments on social media and stuff like that is, well, it's too risky.
Oh yeah.
It's too risky. I can't. It's safe to go with a traditional W-2 position. It's too risky to do something on my own. And so I'm just curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, well, it is. It is risky. You're 100%. I mean, if you want to be successful, you got to risk it. And sometimes you have to risk it all. And I don't mean just monetarily. I mean, sometimes there are moments that, early on, and I'm thankful that my kids don't remember this. I mean, my son, I put him inside a garbage truck when he was 2 or 3 years old, but he barely remembers the garbage times, right?
Mm,
My daughters don't remember them all. My youngest one for sure has no clue what the sacrifice was in the 80 hours and the 90 hours and longer. I mean, my wife came home with our third child after giving birth and did a route change in bed, 2 days later, because that's what you have to do.
yeah,
You just have to do it. So that part, it is risky, but it's also, there's nothing else that will reward you that way.
yeah,
You will have to put in the time. You will have to put in the effort. You will have to sacrifice some dinners. You will have to sacrifice some weddings. I can remember one time we were opening up a new city bid. We had won a city bid in sanitation, and so we were taking over the business, and we're putting cans out there and acquiring trucks and training people and staff. And we were going to launch that Monday. My cousin had a wedding in Maryland. We were in Atlanta, the Atlanta, metro Atlanta area, and I had a cousin, and my father-in-law was like, well, how are you? My cousin wanted me to be in the wedding. I said, this is my cousin. I've grown up with him my whole life. I've got to be in his wedding. He wanted me to be in his wedding. He said, well, how are you going to do that? You've got this going on. And he said, he told me, he literally told me, you can fly up there and go to the wedding on Saturday and you come home on Sunday and
hmm
we back to work. And so this idea that I was going to go, I didn't go to the rehearsal. I wasn't there for Thursday. I didn't have the after party. I mean, it was literally showed up Saturday morning. The tux was there. I tightened up the belt a little bit more on the rental, and stood by him and had a quick dinner and got up early Sunday morning and flew home and ready to go. And so you have to make sacrifices in it. Um, and so I would tell somebody that's looking at entrepreneurship and looking at making that jump, make some calculated risks.
right,
I get it. I was young. So when I said I'm going to leave the security of that and go to this, it was calculated. My father-in-law had savings. So he had kids when he did it and he
uh-huh.
borrowed, found some family to borrow, but he calculated it to a degree. So he had savings that they could live on as they were growing this business. But ultimately, if it failed, he could have found himself in some real hardship there. But make calculated risks. Don't This is one thing that bothers me. Where I am today, I get a lot of people that pitch me their ideas for
Uh-huh.
business or products or whatever it is. You need to find some like an advisory board,
Yeah,
and it sounds bigger than what you think it is. It can be some great business leaders, it
hmm
can be some friends, it can be a spouse and some close, but you need people that will tell you the truth.
right,
I I'll give you a quick one here. I had a friend that, well, a pilot was that. So there was a time I was doing retail stuff and consulting with a group. And so we had a plane that we could fly. I could get around to places quick and then back home. My thing, I wanted to get there and I want to get it home quick and be at home. And the area I live in is not really conducive to flights. So I'm like on the coast of Florida. And so I would fly. So I just get a plane and I jump and go and see stuff and come back. And my pilot said, hey, my son really wants to pitch this idea to you. And I said, well, my time, have him jump on a plane and he can have a 3 hour flight. He can pitch me and then go
hmm
home. And so he did. He sat on the plane. He pitched me, and it was sunscreen. Daily applying sunscreen like the Dollar Shave Club. He wanted to send people these 1 day packets of sunscreen because we don't put sunscreen on enough, and the UV rays are really bad for us, and it can cause skin cancer. And all that may be true,
hmm
but I said, have you tested this? Like, I mean, you want investors and you want people to come behind you, you want support, but have you calculated your risk? Because you have a family to think about and you have other things to think about. And how deep are you into this? I said, go to farmer's market. He said, well, I've already started creating packets and stuff. I said, man, you are in deep right now. You
Mm.
need to go to a farmer's market and see if you can, do people even want daily use sunscreen? And, he found out there's no market for it. I
Yeah.
mean, to get people on. So you need to test it. You need to test your idea. You need to test where you're at. And the fortitude is what I would say, get an advisory board that can help you maybe calculate that risk a little bit better,
Hmm.
that can help you feel better. Are you ready for it? And so before you just jump in, but yeah, it's risky. It's
Yeah.
100% risky.
And the thing that I found also is that traditional employment isn't without risk because
No. Yeah.
things change, economy changes, whatever, and then all of a sudden, um, you may be out of a job
Yeah. Yeah.
just because.
Yeah. You're totally right. You may be out of a job and you have no control over it. So
Right.
when you run your business, you can. You
Yeah.
and you're the one making the decision that says, okay, I always said in business when I see retraction happening, and I've served on boards and I've consulted with businesses that have been in moments in their time they've had to retract to
Mhm.
survive. And it's a tough space to be in. Nobody wants layoffs, but you get to make those decisions when you're running a business, and they're hard decisions, but they're your decisions. The mantra I would use when you're in those spaces is do the best for most.
Yeah.
Do the best for most. Look at your business and understand that it needs to survive, and you've got to do the best for your business so that you can do the best for most.
Yeah.
And because so those are tough situations. But yeah, when you're not the person making the decision, you're left outside the room. You don't have no control over it.
Right.
But when you're the business owner, you can pivot. One of the most interesting stories I ever heard, and I had served on a board with this guy, although I wouldn't recommend serving on him with him. But his family owned a company that they were selling soaps way back in the 1800s, and they were selling soaps door to door. And to help sell soaps, they'd put gum inside the soaps, and nobody was buying the soaps, but they loved the gum. And so they switched over to gum, and the next thing you know, Wrigley Company was formed. So
Wow.
it's really interesting how you can pivot in that world.
Yeah.
So there are great stories of entrepreneurs pivoting
Hmm.
and that's what you can do as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
is pivot if you have to.
I love that. One question that I have about you talked about having an advisory board, and that's an idea I've heard from a couple people, and I don't know that it's widespread enough that people are using even informal advisory boards. But how do you decide who you put on that board? And it doesn't have to be an actual formal group, but it's
That's
just
correct.
people
That's
that
correct.
you would run things by. But I would think that you want to choose people that have the kind of mindset that you want to grow into, rather than the person that's going to be holding you back, that, oh, that's risky, you don't want to do that because it's scary to have a job that's not a W-2.
I think you need a little bit of everybody. I think you need like a little smorgasbord of advisory. So I wouldn't shy away from the negative Nancy. I
Mhm.
don't, look, I'm not a big fan of having a wet blanket in your organization,
Right.
right? You need people that pull the cart the same way. But on an advisory board, it's not, I don't like to shy away from people that are like, whoa, because that can help you say, am I thinking about this correctly?
Mhm.
I listen to a guy, there's a group down here called Live Oak Fiber. And I was just speaking at a conference, and the CEO, or actually, I think he's Chief Revenue Officer, which he very well may have been the CEO, but I kind of like that title, revenue. I'm all about revenue.
Right.
I think that's really important in business. But when he set up his business in our area to do fiber technologies in our area, he really didn't want to find people in the fiber world.
Mm.
He wanted to find people that probably understood, why they want, what their internet speeds were. He wanted consumers that were really good at what they do. So sometimes you need some out of the box thinking, which I thought was great because you need somebody to look critically at what you're doing. So I would look for, if I'm an advisory board, of course I'd look for business leaders in the community if you have relationships to them. If you're a young person, look to your parents' friends.
Hmm.
If you've got, if you, your parents very well could be an advisory, but look, there's always there's a dynamic there, but look to their friends. A lot of times you wouldn't, your parents' friends could be the sheriff or could be a councilman or could be, the guy that owns the franchise or the coffee shop, and talk to these people about what's going on. If you're involved inside your church, see who's on your elder boards or your deacons or your Sunday school teachers, and look to those people that are there
Yeah.
and bring some of those people in. And it doesn't have to be formal. In fact, here's what's really cool about it. You just say, hey, look, I need some, don't call it an advisory board because then it can seem too much. And these aren't paid people. These are just
Yeah.
people that said, hey, you would be surprised at how many people want to help an entrepreneur. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised at how many people want to help people get there. People ask me all the time. I had somebody ask me after I did this talk just at this conference, this guy pulled me aside and he goes, how much would I need to pay you to be a coach? I said, just email me. Just email me and
Right.
ask me some questions. I ain't got time. I ain't got a form. Just email me and I'll answer your questions. Buy me a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't believe if you just took somebody lunch or took them to coffee, the what you would get. But just say, hey, I need a team that will look critically at what I'm doing. And here's the cool thing. You can chat GPT an entire format. You can chat GPT the questions you should ask these people. You can say, this person's in coffee shops. This is what I'm trying to start. What are the questions should I ask him?
Yeah.
There are so many things you can do to like discover and challenge yourself to make the idea better and to make sure you're on the right track for sure.
I love it. What advice would you give to somebody who is at that point in their career where they realize this is not taking me where I want to go,
Mhm.
and they're not quite sure how to take or what the next step would be?
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's a tough question because, when you feel really stuck and you hate where you're at, I do think you need to start you need to start thinking like what are your interests. I mean that's one thing is like what are what are you passionate about. And when people say that, they think, well, I'm passionate about skiing. Yeah, okay, but how are you going to make that a business? So sometimes it might be, I know people that are just passionate about fixing problems.
Yeah.
So have you thought about like working inside a different organization or starting something that solves people's problems?
Yeah.
If you really like to do those things. So what are you good at? Like you need to take an assessment of your skill set, take an assessment of your passions, and I do think you need to look at some resources, maybe chat GPT it, maybe put those in and say, hey, what fits? What services fit here? What what businesses fit inside this skill set and the passions I have? What would be unique to me?
Yeah.
And kind of assess that. And then you got to start putting a plan together. One thing people don't do, and they're stuck, and this is what I talk to a lot of people all the time, and I counsel young people to do this early, 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 because if you're a young person today and you're listening to this, the one thing you have is time. You have time on your side, and that is so dang important because you need to be saving money
Yeah.
all the time. And if you have savings, see, the savings creates money, creates time, and
Hmm.
time creates opportunity. And so you've got to be able to have that because if you're stuck in a position and you start to assess your talents and you start to assess your passions, but you have some savings, well, now you got options.
Yeah.
Now you got options. And so that's what I would tell, I tell you to assess your skill set, assess your assets and your passions, and then figure out where you can apply them. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to stay where you are. The average person changes careers 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of to say, I don't like this and I want to do something else. It's not unheard of.
Yeah. And one of the things that is so helpful is to get an outside perspective
Yeah.
of what you're good at. Because
Yeah.
one of the things that I found is I would have people tell me, you're good at this. And I would think, but everybody's good at that. And
Right.
it's not true.
Right. Right. That's a good point. That's a really good point. I mean, if you're also not engaged in a like a men's group or women's group or business group or something like that, you need to get engaged right now.
Yeah.
You need to find some people around you that no matter what. I mean, when I was early on, I had a young guy or an older gentleman pulled me inside and he said, "Hey, do you want to come to my breakfast club we do?" And it was business leaders, and none of us could be in the same business. So we could all come in there and feel free to talk about our problems and our trials and our successes in business. So we had a guy that owned a national car dealership, and we had a banker, and we had a guy that sold potatoes at the farmer's market, and we had me as a garbage man, and we had a builder, and we had different people that came in. Had a guy that was a painter, owned a painting business, and he was painting commercial buildings. And so we had all these different businesses that came in. It was such an incredible breakfast club. We just did it once a month.
Hmm.
But I loved being able to get with those men because they were older than me, and I got to hear their ideas in their industries and how they were solving problems and how they were rewarding employees and how they were taking feedback and how they were growing or retracting or solving. And that was so important. So yeah, you gotta, I think you're right. Outside counsel isn't just about starting your business. You need to start it now.
Yeah. And that perspective is really valuable. This has been, I've had a blast. So
I have too, Ken. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. Thank you.
this has been great. And we could keep chatting for
For
more
sure.
time than either one of us has. But
That's right.
um, if somebody wants to get to know you a little bit better, learn
Yeah.
about you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I check all my DMs on social. So if you DM me, that'd be great. Or you comment on a reel or a post, that's great. So Instagram is probably my favorite one right now. So I'd say @_Jason_Becker. So @_Jason_Becker. There's another Jason Becker out there that was an incredible guitarist. He's like the longest living person with ALS. So
Oh, wow.
like he gets the @Jason Becker one.
Right.
But _Jason_Becker. And then, they can go and just, you can Google what the hell do I know with JB?
Yeah.
And I'm everywhere you get your pods, and I'd love to connect with you, love to help you however I can.
Sounds great. It has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thanks for
Yeah,
agreeing to do this with me. And let's do it again.
absolutely. Hey, listen, anytime, Ken. Thank you for responding back. It's been my honor to be on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's like I said, so many of the requests that I get are so boring. And
Stand.
I think my response to you was something like, okay, you have my attention.
Yeah, it said intrigued. Yep, yep,
That's right.
yep.
So this has been a blast. Thanks so much for doing this. And we will talk to y'all next week. Thanks for listening.
Get back to the work you love, where you face less stress, gain more happiness, and live into your purpose. Let me help you become unstuck and unstoppable so you can finally have the life you want. Head over to my website to connect with me at kenwilliamscoaching.com.